If you had opened this door on an ordinary morning, you wouldn't have believed you were stepping into one of history's greatest tragedies. To the people who lived here, this city wasn't a warning, it was a promise. A place where families built their futures, merchants expanded their businesses, and children grew up expecting life to continue exactly as it always had. In the summer of AD 79, Pompeii was thriving. Nearly 20,000 people called this place home, making it one of the busiest towns in southern Italy. Its greatest advantage wasn't luck, it was location. Sitting near the Bay of Naples, Pompeii was connected to trade routes that stretched across the Mediterranean, bringing grain, wine, olive oil, marble, spices, glassware, and luxury goods into the city almost every day. Wealth here did not arrive as a single grand event, it arrived quietly, shipment by shipment, sale by sale, morning after morning. A merchant counting coins, a farmer unloading produce, a shopkeeper preparing for customers. Each small routine helped power one of the Roman world's most active local economies. And when a city stays prosperous long enough, prosperity stops feeling remarkable, it begins to feel permanent. Every morning, long before the streets were fully awake, another rhythm had already begun. Bakers had been working since before dawn, feeding fires and preparing enough bread for thousands of people. Archaeologists have uncovered more than 30 bakeries in Pompeii, a reminder that even something as ordinary as breakfast depended on a surprisingly organized urban system. Bread was not just food here, it was the pulse of the city. The same was true of water. Fresh water flowed through public fountains thanks to Roman engineering that still impresses historians today. For many people, stopping to fill a clay jar would not have felt extraordinary. It was simply part of the day. That is what comfort does to the human mind. Even the achievements that once seemed impossible can become invisible when people live with them long enough. In wealthier homes, that comfort became art. Walls were covered with colorful frescoes, floors decorated with mosaics, and quiet courtyards designed for meals, conversation, and escape from the heat of the streets. These paintings were not created for museums. They were made for dinner guests, family celebrations, private ambitions, and ordinary evenings no one imagined history would one day preserve beneath volcanic ash. Sooner or later, much of Pompeii's life passed through the Forum. It was not only a marketplace, it was where business agreements were made, court cases were heard, religious ceremonies were held, and political promises competed for attention. Even the walls had voices. Archaeologists have found election slogans painted across Pompeii, many written by ordinary citizens supporting the candidates they believed in. Nearly 2,000 years later, their opinions are still waiting there. And beyond the city, the land itself added to Pompeii's confidence. The slopes around Vesuvius were fertile, rich with vineyards and farms that helped make the region famous for wine. To us, the mountain feels like a threat because we know how the story ends. But to the people who lived beneath it, Vesuvius was part of the landscape, part of the economy, part of home. That is what makes Pompeii so unsettling. The danger was not hidden in darkness, it stood in plain sight every day, familiar enough to seem harmless. 17 years before the eruption, a powerful earthquake had struck the region in AD 62. Buildings collapsed, temples were damaged, and large parts of the city had to be repaired. But life returned. Shops reopened, homes were rebuilt. The memory of destruction slowly faded back into routine. Smaller tremors continued in the years that followed, but many people had learned to live with them. When something frightening happens often enough without changing your life, the mind stops treating it as a warning. Today, psychologists have a name for this tendency: normalcy bias. The quiet belief that because yesterday ended safely, tomorrow probably will too. The people of Pompeii were not foolish, they were human. They had work to finish, meals to prepare, debts to settle, children to protect, and futures they still believed belonged to them. No one wakes up inside a disaster. At first, it simply feels like another day beginning. And that was Pompeii's final illusion. History almost never announces itself. It usually arrives disguised as ordinary life. The first signs of disaster rarely look like the end of the world. More often, they look like another problem waiting to be explained. That morning, the people of Pompeii did what people have always done when faced with uncertainty. They searched for ordinary answers to an extraordinary event. For years, the ground beneath the Bay of Naples had never been completely still. Small earthquakes had become part of everyday life, and after surviving so many of them, confidence quietly replaced caution. Experience had taught people that the earth could shake without destroying the future they were planning. That confidence shaped every decision that followed. Some families stayed together inside their homes. Others stepped outside, hoping to understand what was happening before deciding to leave. Shopkeepers thought about closing their businesses. Parents searched for children who had wandered into the streets. Every decision was made with the same hope that normal life would soon return. But disasters have a dangerous way of borrowing time before revealing their true nature. Every minute spent waiting made the next decision more difficult. Leaving meant abandoning homes, businesses, memories, and everything people had spent a lifetime building. Staying meant trusting that the familiar world around them would remain familiar for just a little longer. No one standing in Pompeii that morning believed they were living through one of history's greatest disasters. They believed they were living through a difficult day. And that difference would change everything.
It didn't take long for uncertainty to disappear. The mountain had made the decision for everyone. As the eruption intensified, fragments of volcanic rock continued to fall across the city. Roofs began collapsing under a weight they had never been built to carry, while thick ash turned daylight into an unfamiliar darkness. For those still inside Pompeii, every passing minute narrowed the number of possible escapes. Everything we know about those hours comes largely from one young Roman who witnessed the disaster from across the Bay of Naples. Writing years later to the historian Tacitus, Pliny the Younger described a towering cloud rising into the sky like a great pine tree, its trunk climbing upward before spreading into enormous branches. Nearly 2,000 years later, his words remain one of history's most remarkable eyewitness accounts. By the following morning, pyroclastic surges, fast-moving currents of superheated gas, ash and rock, swept across Pompeii. They moved too quickly to outrun and too violently to resist. In only a matter of moments, an entire city disappeared beneath volcanic deposits that would eventually reach several meters in depth. And then, silence. For centuries, Pompeii vanished from the world. Streets, homes, workshops, temples, even unfinished meals remained hidden beneath the ash, untouched by time. When archaeologists began uncovering the city in the 18th century, they discovered something no one expected. Pompeii had not simply been destroyed, it had been preserved. That is why Pompeii still speaks to us today, not because it tells us how the Romans died, but because it shows us, with extraordinary detail, how they lived. And perhaps that's why walking through Pompeii today doesn't feel like visiting ancient ruins. It feels like stepping into a single, ordinary day that never had the chance to end.